The hospital smelled of antiseptic, sharp and sterile, mixed with an invisible heaviness of worry and fear. The steady beeping of machines filled the quiet halls, creating a rhythm that never stopped. Every sound felt sharp, every breath heavy. The air was thick with an uneasy stillness, broken only by the occasional rustle of paper or the hurried footsteps of nurses moving from one patient to another. Elena Carter sat in the waiting area, clutching her stomach. The cold, hard chair beneath her did nothing to comfort her aching body. She shifted slightly, but the movement sent another sharp pain through her abdomen, making her wince. She had been trying to ignore the discomfort for days, telling herself it was just stress, just exhaustion, just something that would go away on its own. But it hadn't. Instead, it had worsened, until every step she took felt like a battle, every breath a reminder that something was wrong. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth of the room. The fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow, making the pale green walls seem even colder. People sat around her, some coughing weakly, some staring blankly at their phones, some whispering in hushed voices. A child whimpered somewhere nearby, their mother murmuring reassurances that everything would be okay. But would it? Elena swallowed hard, blinking against the dizziness that threatened to overtake her. She had spent so much time focusing on her career, on rebuilding her life from the shattered pieces of her past, that she had ignored her body's warning signs. She had always been strong, always the one who pushed through pain, through heartbreak, through disappointment. But now she wasn't so sure. "Miss Carter, the doctor will see you now," a nurse called from the doorway, her voice kind but professional. Elena took a slow, deep breath and forced herself to stand. The moment she did, her vision swam, and for a brief second, the world tilted dangerously. She reached out, gripping the armrest of the chair until the dizziness passed. She nodded at the nurse and followed her down the quiet hallway. The smell of disinfectant grew stronger as they moved deeper into the hospital. Doors lined the corridor, some open, revealing patients in beds, IV drips hooked to their arms. Some looked exhausted, some scared, some simply resigned. Elena forced her gaze forward, willing herself not to think too much, not to let fear sink its claws into her. The nurse led her into a small, brightly lit examination room. The white walls were bare, except for a single poster about healthy eating, its bright colors out of place in the otherwise clinical space. The paper covering the examination table crinkled loudly as Elena sat down. She pressed a hand to her forehead, feeling the slight dampness of sweat on her skin. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady herself. She hated hospitals, hated the way they made her feel small and vulnerable. She had spent years building herself up, proving to the world and to herself that she didn't need anyone, that she could handle anything on her own. But right now, she felt anything but strong. The door creaked open. "Miss Carter." The voice stopped abruptly. Elena's eyes snapped open. She knew that voice. Even after all this time, even after everything, she knew it instantly. Her breath caught in her throat as she slowly looked up. Standing before her, wearing a white coat, his dark hair slightly tousled, a stethoscope draped around his neck, was the last man she ever wanted to see. Dr. Adrian Black, her runaway groom. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them thickened, charged with something unspoken, that something old and painful. Elena's fingers tightened against the edge of the examination table. Adrian's face was unreadable, but his eyes, those same deep, stormy eyes she had once loved, flickered with something she couldn't quite name. Shock? Guilt? Regret? She had spent years trying to erase him from her life, from her heart. And yet, here he was. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. Adrian's face turned pale. The air between them became heavy with unspoken words, unhealed wounds, and the kind of pain that never truly goes away. "What are you doing here?" Elena snapped, her pain now replaced by anger. Adrian took a careful step forward. "Elena, don't say my name like that," she cut him off. "You lost that right the moment you left me at the altar." The memories flooded back. The beautiful church filled with white roses, the guests whispering as time passed, her standing alone in her wedding dress, humiliated. He had disappeared without a word. No calls, no letters, just gone. And now, here he was, standing in front of her, wearing a doctor's coat as if he hadn't ruined her life. "I never wanted to hurt you," Adrian finally said, his voice full of regret. Elena let out a bitter laugh. Oh, you didn't want to? Well, that makes everything better, doesn't it? A heavy silence filled the space between them. Adrian cleared his throat and slipped back into his professional role. You're in pain. Let me check your condition. Elena hesitated, torn between her pride, anger, and the pain in her stomach. But she had no choice. Fine, she muttered. Just do your job, Doctor. As Adrian carefully examined Elena, his fingers barely touched her skin. His touch was light, so light that it should have been easy to ignore. But she felt it. She felt the warmth of his fingertips against her, and it sent a shiver down her spine. It was the same touch she had once dreamed about, the same touch she had longed for in quiet moments when she had let herself miss him. But now, she forced herself to push those thoughts away. This was different. This wasn't the time to dwell on the past or on what could have been. Adrian's brows furrowed in concentration as he pressed gently against her abdomen. A flicker of concern passed over his face, and then he exhaled, stepping back. Your appendix is inflamed, he said finally, his voice calm but firm. You need emergency surgery. Elena's stomach twisted, but this time it wasn't because of the pain. Her breath caught in her throat. Surgery? She repeated, the word barely escaping her lips. Adrian gave her a reassuring nod. It's a simple procedure, he said. His voice was steady, as if he had done this 100 times before. Of course, he had. He was one of the best surgeons she had ever known. That was never the problem. He hesitated for only a second before adding, I'll be the one performing it myself. Elena's heart pounded against her ribs. No, not him. She couldn't let him be the one. Her fingers clenched the edge of the hospital bed as she shook her head. No, she said, her voice suddenly sharper. Get someone else. For a moment, there was silence. Then Adrian's jaw tightened. His expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes darkened. Elena, he said, his voice lower now, more serious. I am the best surgeon here. I won't let anything happen to you. She wanted to fight him on this. She wanted to tell him that she didn't trust him, not anymore. That she didn't want him anywhere near her, especially not when she was at her most vulnerable. But the pain was getting worse. A sharp, stabbing sensation shot through her side, making her wince. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she realized she didn't have the strength to argue. With great reluctance, she swallowed hard and gave a small nod. Fine, she whispered, barely able to get the word out. Adrian exhaled, his shoulders relaxing just a little. He gave her one last nod before turning to leave the room. But then, just as he reached the door, he stopped. He hesitated, his fingers tightening around the doorknob before he turned back toward her. His expression had changed. There was something softer in his eyes now. Elena, his voice was quieter now, almost hesitant. I know I owe you an explanation, and I promise after this, I'll give you one. She didn't say anything. She didn't trust promises, not from him, and she wasn't sure if she even wanted to hear whatever excuse he had to offer. When Elena woke up, the pain had become less, but her emotions were more confusing than before. The surgery had gone well, and Adrian had saved her life, but now she had to face the man who had broken her heart, the man she had once loved with everything she had. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as the memories of the past came rushing back. The love, the promises, the heartbreak, it all felt too much. She had imagined this moment so many times, but now that he was here, she didn't know what to say. The door creaked open and Adrian stepped inside. He paused for a moment as if unsure whether he was welcome. His eyes, filled with hesitation and something else, guilt maybe, locked onto hers. Slowly, he walked toward her bed and sat down on the chair beside her, his hands clasped together tightly. Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. The anger she had felt before was still there, but it was buried under layers of confusion and pain. She needed answers. Why did you leave? She asked, her voice softer now, missing the sharp edge of anger it had held before. Tell me the truth, Adrian. No more lies. Adrian let out a deep sigh and looked down at his hands. Because I had no choice. Elena frowned, her chest tightening. That's not an answer, she whispered. You disappeared the night before our wedding, Adrian. You broke me. I deserve to know why. He ran a hand through his dark hair, his jaw tightening as if he was struggling to find the right words. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, filled with a pain she had never heard before. The night before our wedding, I got a call, he said, his gaze shifting away from her. It was about my father. He was in deep debt with dangerous people. People who don't forgive, Alina. They knew about us, and they threatened to hurt you if I didn't disappear. I had no choice. I had to go. I had to protect you. Elena stared at him, her mind racing. She had spent years wondering why he had left, and now hearing this, she didn't know what to feel. Anger? Sadness? Relief? It was too much. Why didn't you tell me? She finally asked, her voice shaking. Adrian's eyes darkened with regret. Because they were watching. They made it clear, if I contacted you, if I even tried to explain, they would come after you. I couldn't risk that. So I left, because I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. Tears burned in her eyes, blurring her vision. She had spent so many nights crying over him, thinking she wasn't enough, that maybe he had never loved her at all. And now she was hearing this? So you just vanished? She whispered, with hurt. Her voice filled with hurt. You didn't think I deserved to know? You left me standing there, wondering why the man I loved didn't want me anymore. I tried to come back, Adrian admitted, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted to explain, but by the time it was safe, you had already moved on. Elena blinked, her heart pounding. You thought I moved on? Adrian let out a sad chuckle, shaking his head. You were in the newspapers, Alina. A successful businesswoman, beautiful, strong. I saw your pictures, read about how powerful you had become. I thought maybe you were better off without me. Elena clenched her fists. He had no idea how wrong he was. You broke me, Adrian, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you have any idea how long it took me to trust again? How many nights I spent hating you, loving you, missing you? His gaze softened, and he reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I never stopped loving you, Elena, he said, his voice raw. Not for a second. A deep silence filled the room, heavy with emotions that had been buried for years. The memories of their past, the time they had lost, and the pain they had both suffered surrounded them like an invisible wall. Neither of them spoke for a long moment, as if words were not enough to express everything they felt. Adrian finally broke the silence, his voice quiet but full of uncertainty. Do you hate me? Elena took a slow, shaky breath. She had spent years believing she hated him. She had told herself over and over again that she despised him for leaving her. But now, as she sat here in front of him, knowing the truth, she wasn't sure how she felt anymore. I did, she admitted honestly. For a long time. But now, I don't know. Adrian watched her carefully, his expression filled with regret and hope. He slowly reached for her hand as if afraid she would pull away. And she did. I need time, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. I'll wait, he said softly, for as long as it takes. Elena hesitated, then finally looked up into his eyes. She searched his face, looking for any trace of dishonesty. But all she saw was the man she had once loved, the man who had once meant everything to her. And despite all the years apart, despite all the hurt, she realized something that scared her. She had never truly stopped loving him. Maybe, just maybe, fate had brought them back together for a reason.